Breaking news, Joe Flacco is beginning the 2024 league year with an actual NFL team and not on his couch, making him ineligible to win Comeback Player of the Year. Welcome everybody to JG9 News. We talk all things NFL all the time. I'm Jero Gare9 representing the 904 from the 602, and today we are talking about the Indianapolis Colts making a move at quarterback, getting a guy behind Anthony Richardson, as they have signed the reigning Comeback Player of the Year, the veteran Joe Flacco, to a one-year contract worth upwards of $8.7 million. Joe Flacco last year wasn't on a team for most of the season. Then the Browns had some massive injury issues, had some massive trouble with the quarterback position, especially after Deshaun Watson went down, started 5 different quarterbacks on the entire season. They brought on Flacco, saw what he could do, and he played pretty well for the most part. 13 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 1,616 yards, a 4-1 record in his 5 games as the starting quarterback. Now, he did struggle in that playoff game against the Texans, 2 interceptions on back-to-back pick sixes, but he did have a nice game against Jacksonville, had a nice fourth quarter in that win against Chicago, played well, won Comeback Player of the Year as a result. You know my thoughts on Comeback Player of the Year if you watched my channel before, and how I think it was very questionable the fact that Flacco won. Either way, he is the new number 2 quarterback in Indianapolis behind Anthony Richardson. And if you're a Colts fan, well, I would honestly be a bit conflicted about this, because I'm not sure how Joe Flacco is going to necessarily work in Indianapolis with that offense that Shane Steichen runs. On one hand, yes, you need a backup quarterback. You absolutely need a backup quarterback. Anthony Richardson, we think he's got a lot of potential, the 4th overall pick in last year's NFL draft out of Florida. He showed a lot of promise when he played, but obviously there are massive injury concerns with Richardson. He played 4 games, that's it, and he only finished 1 of them. The one that he finished was an overtime game against the Los Angeles Rams. Every other game that he played, he was not the quarterback by the end of it. He missed most of last season. Got hit late in that game against Jacksonville. Obviously, he was trying to get the Colts to come back from down 2 scores. There was a concussion he suffered in week 2. And then obviously the shoulder injury, the AC joint in his throwing shoulder in week 5, that sidelined him for the rest of the season. So you need a backup quarterback, especially because you know that Sam Ehlinger is not the guy. We saw him in preseason, unimpressive in preseason, and when he does get the opportunity to play in the regular season, not so much. 0-3 as a starter, 76.1 career passer rating. For some perspective, that would have ranked 32nd out of 33 quarterbacks this season, only ahead of Bryce Young. The league-wide average is somewhere around 92. You can maybe get away with a guy like Ehlinger as your backup if you don't have an injury-prone quarterback, but obviously Richardson is very injury-prone. He cannot be the next man up if you want to have any chance at winning and any chance at success in 2024 and beyond. The problem with getting Flacco, though, is I don't know if this is a good fit. Yes, Flacco is a very good backup quarterback, obviously. We saw that last year. But is this a good fit schematically? Not talking like veteran presence or anything like that, because obviously Flacco will provide a very good veteran presence for Anthony Richardson. He'll learn a lot from him. But look at who the Colts had last year as a backup quarterback. Gardner Minshew, who is now with the Las Vegas Raiders. Minshew is very, very mobile like Richardson. You may have had to tweak a few things with the offense here and there, but Minshew has the ability, if necessary, to take off and run. And that's big because Anthony Richardson is a running quarterback. There were 2 games last season where Richardson went into the 4th quarter. He got injured against the Titans, injured against the Texans. So the 2 games he played in the 4th quarter were week 1 against Jacksonville and an overtime game against the Rams in week 4. In both of those games, he had 10 or more rushing attempts. So mobility, running, that's a big part of the offense under Anthony Richardson. That's a big part of his game. That's a big part of how this offense functions and likes to move the ball down the field. We saw some RPO stuff in that week 1 game against Jacksonville, just to give you some idea. Flacco is obviously not that. He is not that guy. Joe Flacco had 2 rushing yards last year. That's it. When he does run the ball, it's a lot of time kneel downs and QB sneaks. His longest run last season was 3 yards. You have to play the offense very differently with Joe Flacco versus Anthony Richardson. I feel like to some extent, Minshew and Richardson, in terms of their mobility, in terms of how they can move in the pocket, and in terms of how they can run around and make something happen, improvise and whatnot, I feel like they're pretty similar in that regard. Obviously, they're not entirely the same. Minshew has a bit of a noodle arm. Anthony Richardson, notorious for having a cannon of an arm. So that part of the game is a bit different. You might not be able to go as vertical, But in terms of running RPOs, having that in the playbook, you could do a lot of the same stuff with Richardson that you did with Minshew. You can't do that with Joe Flacco. You're basically running a completely different offense in that regard. Your third down package with Richardson is a lot different than your third down package with Flacco. Maybe Richardson may not be able to do QB sneaks, but Flacco can. Maybe you can't do RPOs with Flacco, but Richardson, you can do them. It's a very different thing. It's a very different look. It's going to be tough to necessarily practice because you're basically going to be running two different offenses unless there's something that magically changes, and I'm not sure if anything's going to change in that regard. Again, Joe Flacco, a very good backup quarterback. Don't get me wrong. I think this signing makes a lot of sense in the sense that the Colts needed a backup quarterback badly. We didn't know who they were going to get. Probably too pricey to get a guy like Jameis Winston, but a guy like Drew Lock, you figure maybe they had a chance at getting before. I think Flacco makes a ton of sense for the Colts in that regard, in the sense that you need a backup quarterback. I'm just not sure Flacco is the right quarterback for what this offense is. I'm not sure if you can't plug and play Flacco with Richardson. You can't plug and play Flacco into the same offense you were running Richardson. You're building the game around Richardson, and if Richardson goes down, and just based on history, there's a chance he goes down, you put Flacco in, it's going to be a completely different offense, completely different plays, unlike Minshew, and I'm not sure that might be the best strategy. I just want to clarify with all that really quickly that when I talk about fit, I don't mean Flacco with Steichen necessarily. Steichen obviously knows Flacco pretty well. Flacco was on the Eagles for a brief moment in time in 2021, and Shane Steichen was the offensive coordinator of the Eagles back in 2021. That was the first year that Nick Sirianni was the head coach there. So I'm not talking about that. It's more of Flacco and Richardson play completely contrasting styles. You have to run the offense very differently. But it's not about Flacco and Steichen not necessarily knowing each other or getting along. It has nothing to do with that whatsoever. It's more Flacco and Richardson. They are very, very different people. Either way, Joe Flacco, a member of the Indianapolis Colts, the reigning comeback player of the year. We didn't know how much he had left in the tank. We didn't know if he was done after the 2022 season. Didn't even know if he was done for 2023, but he's got one more year minimum left in the tank to try and build on his impressive resume since coming into the league in 2008 as a first-round pick with the Baltimore Ravens. Obviously a highly accomplished quarterback, won a Super Bowl MVP, did a lot of good stuff in Baltimore, and now a new chapter in his NFL career as the backup quarterback, the next man up behind Anthony Richardson on the Indianapolis Colts. But what are your thoughts on the Joe Flacco move? Do you think this move makes sense for Flacco? Do you think this move makes sense for the Colts? Do you like the move? Do you not like the move? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you think the Colts potentially draft a quarterback and kick Ellinger out and go 3 wide at QB? Do you think they could potentially draft a guy in day 3 that runs a similar style to Richardson so you could still have those package plays? Sign a guy like that where you can still have those package plays if Richardson does go down? Again, let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. Very interesting situation to say the least. That's going to do it for this episode of JG9 News. Be sure you like and subscribe. It helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check my main channel, Jaguar Gator 9, where we talk all things NFL history all the time. Until next time, this is Jaguar Gator 9 signing off. And as always, go Jags.